Mama, is Santa not coming for us again this year? The words floated up from Ava's small lips like a snowflake, soft, quiet, and yet so sharp it could pierce through the thickest armor. Maya Williams stood still in the checkout line, her hand tightening around the handle of the nearly empty grocery cart. Her breath hitched. It wasn't just the question. It was everything that had happened just hours earlier. Her pride, her body, even her sense of safety bruised, bent, and humiliated. 3 hours ago, Maya had walked into Jimmy's Grill, the place where she had worked as a line server for almost 8 months. Her shift had barely started when the owner, a thick-set man in his 50s with a handlebar mustache and a perpetual scowl, called her into the back office. "I've had complaints," he said, not looking her in the eye as he flipped through receipts that didn't matter. "Customers say, you don't smile enough, that you're too quiet, makes people uncomfortable." "Medi," Maya had blinked. "Sir, I've never been late. I do everything asked of me." He scoffed. "You people always got an excuse." She froze. "You people?" He leaned back in his chair, his voice low but cold. "Don't play dumb with me. This ain't about race. It's about attitude." Maya had clenched her fists, but kept her voice steady. "Please, Mr. Grayson, it's Christmas. I have a 5-year-old. I was counting on this paycheck to get her something, anything." He stood and walked past her to the door. "You'll get what's left from last week's hours. Minus what you broke yesterday." "What I broke?" she stammered. "That glass tray was already cracked." But he wasn't listening. "Take it or leave it." When she didn't move, he stepped closer. "You deaf or just slow?" She turned to leave, tears forming at the edges of her eyes. Just as she reached for the door, he shoved it open from behind her. The metal frame slammed against her shoulder, hard. She stumbled into the alley behind the restaurant, her jacket catching on the latch, tearing slightly. "Don't come back," he spat, tossing her crumpled final check into the street. Merry damn Christmas. Now, standing in line at Green Mart. That check, barely enough to cover rent, let alone gifts, was balled up in her purse next to a few wrinkled dollar bills and coins. Her shoulder ached from the blow, and her dignity throbbed harder than the bruise. Her grocery cart contained 4 items: a loaf of wheat bread, a gallon of milk, a sack of rice, and a can of tomato soup. The store was dressed for the holidays, garlands, glittering lights, and the distant chime of silver bells echoing from the speakers. But Maya felt miles away from the cheer, as if she and Ava were just shadows in a world meant for others. She looked down at Ava, who stared up at her with innocent hope. The girl wasn't whining. She wasn't even sad. She was just asking a question that pierced Maya like ice. "Is Santa skipping us again?" Before Maya could even think of how to respond, a voice spoke behind them. Low, calm, certain. "Not this year." Maya turned slowly. The man behind them stood tall, dressed in a gray wool coat and a navy scarf. His beard was neatly trimmed, his eyes a soft blue, and his breath hung in the cold air like steam from a morning cup of coffee. He looked like he belonged in a Christmas movie, but there was nothing flashy about him, just solidness, warmth. He held a modest basket, 2 cans of soup, a carton of eggs, a box of oatmeal, and a small wooden angel ornament. "I'm sorry?" Maya asked, unsure she heard him right. He smiled, not the polite kind, but the kind that said, "I've seen pain before." "I said, Santa's not skipping you this year. I promise." She blinked at him, still caught between disbelief and exhaustion. Without waiting for her reply, he stepped forward and set his basket behind hers on the conveyor belt. Then, turning to the cashier, he said, "Add their groceries to mine, please." The teenage cashier, Ben, who Maya had seen dozens of times before, paused mid-scan. Sir, are you sure?" Maya's instincts kicked in. Her pride surged. "No, that's okay, really. You don't have to." "Please," the man said, gently but firmly. "Let me." There was no pity in his voice, no grand gesture, just the quiet certainty of someone who meant what he said. After the humiliation at Jimmy's Grill, the sharpness of his kindness hit even harder. She hesitated. Then Ava looked up at her again, her small fingers tugging at Maya's jacket. "Mama," she whispered, "he's real." And somehow, that did it. Maya nodded, barely holding back tears. "Thank you," she said. her voice a breath. The man smiled once more. Merry Christmas. Outside, the snow had started again. Not the angry kind, but soft, steady flakes that melted on skin. The man walked to a green sedan a few spaces away. He opened the door, paused, then looked back. "You live nearby?" he asked. Maya nodded. "Just off Sycamore, near the old train tracks." "I grew up near there," he said with a faint smile. "Nice folks." She hesitated, then stepped forward. "Can I ask, why did you help us?" He looked at her for a long second. "Because someone once helped me, and I promised I'd pay it forward." He got in his car and drove off without another word. Maya stood there, groceries in hand, Ava at her side, snow falling gently on their shoulders. The pain from her arm was still there. The sting of Grayson's words still echoed somewhere in her bones. But in that moment, standing in the parking lot under the dim glow of holiday lights, she felt something else pressing against the darkness. Not hope exactly, but the beginning of it. And when she got home, after Ava had been tucked in and the groceries put away, Maya sat on the edge of her couch, hands in her lap, and whispered into the silence. "Not this year. If this story touched you, hit like and tell us where you're watching from. You never know who nearby might be watching with you." The heater was broken again. Maya wrapped the frayed scarf tighter around Ava's neck as they stepped into their small one-bedroom apartment. The air inside was barely warmer than the snow-flecked air outside. The thermostat blinked stubbornly at 55 degrees. She exhaled slowly, watching her own breath cloud for a second before it vanished. The groceries sat on the counter: bread, milk, rice, tomato soup, all purchased by a stranger whose name she didn't even know. "Go change into your warm jammies, sweetheart," Maya said softly, brushing a bit of snow off Ava's wool hat. Ava's voice was small. "Will we have hot cocoa tonight?" Maya hesitated. The last packet of cocoa had been used last week, and even that was watered down. But she nodded anyway. "Let me see what I can do." Ava didn't argue. She trusted her mother too deeply to question such promises. She disappeared into the bedroom, dragging her patched-up blanket behind her like a cape. Maya placed the groceries away, hands moving slower than usual. Her shoulder still ached from where the door had slammed into her earlier that day. The pain had dulled, but not disappeared. She touched the spot gently and winced. She sat at the small kitchen table, blinking under the dim yellow light overhead. Their Christmas tree stood in the corner, 3 feet tall, made of plastic, and bent slightly to one side. There were no gifts underneath. Just Ava's drawing from school pinned to the wall above it, a crayon sketch of a big present with "To Mama" scrawled in red. Her eyes drifted toward the window. Snow was falling heavier now. The world looked peaceful from here, quiet, clean, softened. But Maya knew too well that peace was often just a disguise people wore when they didn't have to worry about heat bills or eviction notices. The knock on the wall behind her made her jump. It was Hazel, their neighbor from 3B, tapping twice on the thin drywall, her quiet signal. Maya got up and opened the door. Hazel stood there with her long gray braid over one shoulder and a Tupperware dish in hand. "Figured you two might need something warm tonight," she said, her voice rough but kind. Maya blinked back the tears. "Hazel, I can't keep taking from you." "Don't be foolish," Hazel replied, pushing past her gently and placing the container on the stove. "It's just leftover stew, beef and potatoes, real stuff. No more of that powdered nonsense." Maya managed a smile. "You're a blessing." Hazel gave her a pointed look. "No, I'm old. And I've seen a few winters worse than this. One thing I know: when the world gets cold, people need to get warmer." From the bedroom, Ava's voice called out, "Hi, Miss Hazel." Hazel chuckled. "Hi, sugar. I brought dinner. Come get you some before your mama eats it all." The three of them sat at the table together, the stew warming their hands as much as their bellies. Ava's eyes were wide with joy as she dipped her bread into the broth, humming a little tune under her breath. Maya watched her daughter, then glanced at Hazel. "Something happened today." Hazel raised an eyebrow. "Good or bad?" "Both," Maya replied. "I lost my job. Again." Hazel cursed under her breath. That man, he never liked women who had more spine than he did. Maya chuckled dryly. "He barely paid me for the hours I worked. And he shoved me on the way out." Said, Things I don't even want to repeat. Hazel's eyes narrowed. You need to report him. And then what? Wait 3 months for someone to tell me it's under investigation while Ava goes another winter without boots that fit? Hazel sighed but didn't argue. She knew too well how slow justice moved if it ever moved at all. But then, Maya continued, her voice softer, something else happened. A man. At the store. He paid for our groceries. Hazel's eyes widened slightly. A stranger? Maya nodded. Just stepped in, didn't ask for anything. Said someone once helped him. Hazel leaned back, crossing her arms. Funny. That's how it starts. One kindness, then another, like matches, one spark at a time. Maya looked down at her bowl. It's just been so long since someone looked at me and didn't see a burden. Or a problem. Hazel reached across the table and patted her hand. You're not a burden. You're someone trying. And that counts. Later that night, after Hazel had gone back to her apartment and Ava was fast asleep beneath 2 blankets and her stuffed bear, Maya sat by the window with a mug of hot water pretending to be tea. Her fingers were raw from dish soap and winter air. Her back hurt. Her bank account was down to 2 digits. But her heart somehow felt just a little heavier and a little fuller at the same time. She looked at the little tree, then at Ava's sleeping form through the open bedroom door. Maybe that man was right. Maybe Santa wouldn't skip them this year. She just didn't expect that the miracle would be so quiet. So human. She got up, walked over to the bookshelf, and pulled out a notebook. On the front cover were faded stickers Ava had once placed there. Stars, a moon, and one lopsided heart. Maya opened it and began to write. December 22nd. A stranger saw us today, not as a charity case. Just saw us. And maybe, just maybe, that means tomorrow is still worth believing in. She closed the book, turned off the light, and let the night settle around them like a wool blanket. Hope didn't feel so impossible anymore. The next morning brought light, but not warmth. A thin sheen of frost coated the inside of the windows, shimmering faintly in the early gray dawn. Maya woke up early, muscles stiff from the cold and from the lingering ache in her shoulder. She rubbed the spot gently as she moved out of bed, careful not to wake Ava, who was curled into a perfect little ball beneath 2 blankets, one of them knitted by Maya's late grandmother and patched so many times it had become a quilt of stories. She tiptoed into the kitchen and stared at the calendar pinned to the fridge. December 23rd, just 2 days until Christmas. Her eyes landed on the blank space under December 24, where she'd once hoped to write, "Pick-up gift for Ava." Now it sat empty, mocking in its silence. She sat down at the table, cradling a chipped mug filled with hot water and lemon peel. Hazel had given her the night before. The apartment was still and quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't bring peace, just awareness of everything that was missing. She reached for the notebook again. Flipping to a new page, she scribbled a few ideas, all crossed out after a moment. Toy drive. Missed the deadline. Church gift giveaway. Not enough gas to get there. Dollar store craft. Maybe, if the tips from last week could stretch. Then a thought wild, unformed, and delicate as a snowflake entered her mind. What if they became Santa? Not the kind that showed up in red suits and fake beards, but the kind who slipped hope through a crack in the world when no one was looking. The kind of Santa she'd once believed in as a little girl living in a trailer with her own mama before cancer, before cold winters like this one. She glanced back at Ava, now stirring in bed, her little legs stretching toward the edge of the mattress. "Morning, Mama," the girl mumbled, eyes still half closed. "Morning, baby," Maya said softly, moving over to kiss her forehead. "How'd you sleep?" "Warm." Miss Hazel's stew made my belly feel like a fireplace. Maya smiled. "You're a poet, you know that?" Ava giggled, then looked up seriously. "Did Santa come?" Maya paused. "Not yet, but maybe he's closer than we think." Later that morning, as the sun peeked reluctantly through thick clouds, Maya opened the pantry. There wasn't much. A bag of flour, sugar nearing the bottom, half a bottle of imitation vanilla, a stick and a half of butter. But it was enough. Barely. She took out the ingredients, rolling up her sleeves. "We're baking today," she said. Ava's eyes lit up. "Cookies? For Santa?" "No," Maya said. "For someone who might need a little Christmas." They spent the next few hours in the cramped kitchen, measuring carefully, laughing at Ava's flour-covered cheeks, and dancing between the oven timer and the sound of Christmas music playing from Maya's old phone propped up by a cup. The apartment smelled like vanilla and something close to joy. They ended up with exactly 12 cookies, not perfect, but golden brown and warm, with little sugar crystals that sparkled like frost. Maya found old brown lunch bags from last school year and wrote, "Merry Christmas," on each one in thick black marker. Ava decorated the bags with stickers, snowflakes, stars, and one unicorn. Then Maya bundled them both up in coats, gloves, and scarves, and they stepped out into the cold December afternoon. Their first stop was Mrs. Turner, the widow on the first floor who always nodded politely but rarely spoke. Maya knocked softly, left a bag on the welcome mat, and walked away before the door opened. "Who's next?" Ava whispered excitedly. "Mr. Louis," Maya said. The man with the cane and the angry little dog. They made their rounds. The couple with the newborn who never slept. The single dad in 2C who worked nights. Even Ben, the teenage cashier from Greenmart who lived across the alley in the apartment with the cracked window and rusted fire escape. Each time they left a bag, Ava giggled and whispered, "Merry Christmas," like a secret spell. By the time they returned home, the sun had dipped low, and the sky glowed in hues of blue and pink. Maya's hands were cold, her fingers stiff from the wind, but her heart buzzed with something she couldn't quite name. Maybe this was what the stranger meant. Maybe this was how you kept a miracle alive, you passed it on. That night, as Ava lay curled up beside her, already drifting off to sleep, she whispered, "Mama?" "Yes, sweetheart. Do you think Santa saw us today?" Maya wrapped an arm around her, kissed the top of her head, and whispered back, "I think we were Santa today." Ava smiled in her sleep. And Maya stayed awake for a while longer, watching the snow fall outside, thinking of each bag they'd left, each neighbor who would wake to find something small, something unexpected, something kind. She didn't know the man's name, the one who paid for her groceries, the one who said, "Not this year," but he had done more than cover a receipt. He'd started a fire in a frozen place, and tonight, it was burning still. The morning of December 24th greeted the town with a heavy sky, the kind that promised more snow before nightfall. Maya woke early, the cold biting at her cheeks even beneath the blankets. For a moment, she lay still, listening to the soft hum of winter outside their frosted window. Beside her, Ava slept deeply, clutching her old stuffed bear by one worn ear. The innocence in her daughter's face made Maya's chest swell with both love and something sharper, an ache born from the fear of never being able to give her enough. She slipped out of bed and padded quietly into the kitchen. The air was colder than yesterday. The heater had surrendered overnight, blowing nothing but a tired whisper. She rubbed her hands together briskly, then turned on the stove to warm the room with its single flame, a trick her mother used to do. She reached for her coat, then paused when she saw the 12 cooling racks on the counter empty now. Every cookie had been delivered. Every bag had found a doorstep. And though their pantry was lighter, her heart felt strangely heavier, like something important had shifted inside it. She poured Ava a bowl of cereal, using the last of the milk, then made herself hot water with lemon peel again. As she sat at the table, she heard Hazel's wall tap from the other side, 2 soft knocks. Maya opened the door to find Hazel already bundled in her oversized coat, a knitted hat pulled low over her ears. "You too busy?" Hazel asked. "Not yet. Why?" "Thought I'd take Ava to see the tree downtown. You need a minute to yourself, and she needs a little magic." "Doll?" Maya blinked, startled by the offer. The town square tree was famous, towering, covered in thousands of lights, a glowing centerpiece of the community. But she hadn't dared take Ava this year. Not with her frayed gloves and the weight of everything else. "Hazel, I don't want to impose." "You're not," Hazel said firmly. "Now get her dressed. I'll have her back within the hour." Within minutes, Ava was wrapped up and ready, her eyes bright as she waved goodbye. The apartment door clicked shut, leaving Maya alone in the quiet. She didn't quite know what to do with the stillness. She walked to the window, watched Hazel and Ava disappear into the snowy haze, then exhaled a long, slow breath. Her shoulder ached, a dull reminder of yesterday's humiliation. She traced her fingers along the bruise, the skin warm and tender. She thought of Mr. Grayson, of his voice, of the way he had shoved her. Shame rose in her throat like smoke, thick and bitter. But then another image flashed through her mind. The man at Green Mart, the quiet certainty in his voice when he had said, "Not this year." The sincerity in his eyes, the way he had stepped in without hesitation, without judgment. Someone once helped me. She found herself wondering who had helped him. What kind of moment could make a man carry a promise for decades? What pain had shaped such generosity? She didn't know. And she doubted she would ever see him again. She checked her phone, no messages, no missed calls. She had hoped, secretly, that one of the jobs she applied for might respond. Nothing. She sighed, then began tidying the kitchen to distract herself. Moments later, the hallway creaked, a slow, shuffling sound. She frowned. Was Hazel back already? A gentle knock followed. Maya wiped her hands and opened the door, then froze. A woman stood there, bundled in a puffy red coat, her cheeks pink from the cold. She held a brown paper bag in her gloved hands. "Hi," the woman said, smiling. "I'm from 2C. My daughter found this outside our door last night." Maya's heart fluttered. "One of the cookie bags." "Oh, yes," Maya said slowly. "I hope it didn't cause concern." The woman shook her head vigorously. "Concern? No. It made my whole week." She paused, her eyes softening. "My husband works nights. Sometimes the house feels heavy, you know? That little bag was like a spark. I just wanted to say thank you." Maya's throat tightened. "I thank you. I brought something in return," the woman said, offering the bag. "Just some muffins we baked this morning." Maya hesitated, but the woman's kind eyes insisted. "Please," she said, "let us give a little back." Maya accepted the bag. Her hands trembled as she held it. After the woman left, Maya closed the door and placed the muffins on the table. She sank into a chair, blinking against the sting behind her eyes. This was what kindness did. It traveled, it echoed, it returned home in unexpected ways. The apartment door opened again an hour later as Hazel and Ava returned. Ava was rosy-cheeked, breathless, and glowing. "Mama, Mama," she shouted, running into her arms. "The tree was huge and bright, and Miss Hazel bought me a candy cane and we saw a man dressed like Santa and—" Hazel laughed. "She's been talking like this the whole walk back." Maya hugged her daughter tightly. "I'm glad you had fun." Ava pulled back slightly, eyes shining. "Mama, can we go tonight, with the lights on?" Maya opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. Her first instinct was to say no. Because of the cold. Because of money. Because of everything. But then she remembered the knock on the door, the muffins, the echo of one small act. "Yes," she said finally. "Tonight, we'll go." Ava cheered and ran to her room to change into her brightest sweater. Hazel leaned close and whispered, "Good choice." As evening approached, the sky deepened to a dusky blue, and the first Christmas lights began to glow. Maya bundled Ava in her warmest layers. They stepped into the snow-dusted street, walking hand in hand toward the town square. The tree towered above the crowd, gold lights twinkling like 1,000 tiny heartbeats. Families stood gathered, sipping cider, humming to the carolers singing on the gazebo steps. Ava gasped, gripping Maya's hand tighter. "It's beautiful, Mama." "Yes," Maya whispered. "It is." For a moment, the cold didn't exist. The ache in her shoulder didn't matter. The uncertainty of tomorrow faded. Under that glowing tree, among strangers wrapped in scarves and hope, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Belonging. As they stood there, a subtle warmth pressed at her back like someone watching with gentle eyes. She turned slightly, scanning the crowd. No gray coat, no navy scarf, no wooden angel ornament hanging from a stranger's hand. The man wasn't there, but somehow, his presence was. In every light. In every quiet smile. In every small moment of warmth between people who hadn't known each other a day ago. Ava tugged her sleeve. "Mama, do you think Santa sees us now?" Maya knelt, brushing snow from Ava's cheek. "Baby, I think he's been seeing us all along." Christmas Eve night settled in quietly, as if even the wind had paused to listen. The snow had fallen steadily through the evening, laying a soft white blanket over the sidewalks, rooftops, and the narrow road leading back to Maya's apartment. She and Ava walked slowly, their footsteps muffled in the snow, their fingers intertwined. Ava still clutched the peppermint stick Miss Hazel had bought her at the tree lighting. It was half melted now, and sticky along one side, but she held it like treasure. Her eyes were bright, her cheeks flushed, and her coat slightly askew from all the twirling she'd done beneath the lights. Maya hadn't stopped smiling either. Not really. Not since she'd said yes to that walk to town. Not since she'd let herself believe just a little that Christmas might still belong to them. Back at home, they peeled off layers of winter clothing, leaving gloves and scarves to dry near the stove. The apartment was cold, but the warmth inside them seemed to reach into the corners. "Let's have cocoa," Ava declared. Maya hesitated. They were out of milk. Out of cocoa powder, too. She glanced at the shelf instinctively, as if something might have appeared in her absence. But then she spotted the brown paper bag the woman from 2C had brought earlier, the one she'd left on the table and forgotten in the rush of the evening. Maya opened it gently. Muffins. And nestled at the bottom, a packet of instant hot chocolate. She stared at it for a moment, stunned by the detail. It was like someone had read her mind. Or maybe the world had finally tilted, ever so slightly, back toward mercy. "Coming right up," Maya said, her voice light. Ava beamed. They sat together on the couch, legs curled under a shared blanket, steaming mugs warming their hands. The cocoa wasn't much made with hot water, no milk, but it was rich with something deeper, something neither of them could name. "Mama," Ava said, licking a bit of chocolate from her lip. "Can we make cookies again tomorrow? But this time with sprinkles?" Maya smiled, brushing a curl from Ava's forehead. "We'll see, baby. Maybe next year we'll even make enough for the whole building." Ava grinned. "Ava's bakery. Only open on Christmas," Maya added, chuckling. The laughter hung in the air for a long moment, mingling with the soft sound of the snow tapping against the windows. When Ava drifted off to sleep that night, Maya carried her to bed, tucking the covers gently around her small form. She lingered at the edge of the bed, brushing a hand over her daughter's cheek. "Good night, my sweet girl," she whispered. "You are the best gift I've ever been given." She walked back into the living room, dimmed the last lamp, and sat by the window. Outside, everything was hushed and white, as if the world itself had taken a breath. She watched the snow fall for a long while, sipping the last of her cocoa. Then came the knock. Not loud, not urgent, just 3 gentle taps on the door. She froze. No one knocked this late. Hazel would have used the wall signal, and the building's front door had been locked when she came in. She moved quietly to the door, heart thudding not with fear exactly, but with a kind of cautious curiosity. When she opened it, no one was there. Only a box, wrapped in red paper, simple and neat, with a satin ribbon tied in a bow. No card, no tag. Maya stepped out onto the landing, looking down the hall. Nothing, just snow and silence. She brought the box inside, setting it on the table as if it might vanish if she looked away. Carefully, she pulled the ribbon loose and peeled back the paper. Inside was a gift card, Green Mart, and not a small one. Her eyes widened as she read the balance printed on the receipt. $150. Her fingers trembled. Nestled beside it was a small, white box. She opened it slowly. Inside, resting on a cushion of cotton, was a wooden angel ornament, hand-carved, delicate wings, painted gold at the edges, exactly like the one the man at Green Mart had bought days ago. Her breath caught. She touched the smooth surface of the ornament, the tiny, etched smile. A note was folded beneath it. Not a letter, just a sentence, written in neat, slanted handwriting. "Santa never forgets those who give." Maya sat down hard in the chair. Her eyes stung, and this time she didn't blink the tears away. They came freely, rolling over her cheeks in silent gratitude. This wasn't about the money. It wasn't even about the groceries. It was about being seen, being remembered, being reminded that the small things mattered, that she mattered. For months, she'd walked invisible at work, in the street, even in line at the store. But someone had seen her, not just her struggle, but her spirit. She clutched the ornament in both hands, as if it were fragile glass. She stood, walked over to their small, lopsided Christmas tree, and hung it on the top branch. It tilted slightly but caught the glow of the nearby lamp just right. The angel shimmered, and Maya smiled. She walked to the window one last time, gazing out over the snow-covered street. In the distance, she imagined a man in a gray coat and navy scarf walking away quietly, unnoticed, into the night. She didn't know who he was, but she would never forget what he'd done. Behind her, Ava stirred in her sleep. Maya turned off the last light and let the stillness of Christmas Eve wrap around them like a blanket. The morning sun filtered in through the frosted windows, casting golden slivers across the kitchen floor. For the first time in a long while, Maya woke without the heavy knot of dread sitting in her chest. There were still unpaid bills. The car was still sitting useless in the lot. The heater still wheezed uselessly from the corner of the room. But something was different. There was a wooden angel hanging on the top of their tree now. Ava sat cross-legged on the living room floor, still in her flannel pajamas, clutching the candy cane she hadn't finished from the night before. "Do you think Santa knew where we lived?" she asked, eyes wide with wonder. Maya smiled from the kitchen, where she was warming water for oatmeal. "I think he knew exactly where to find you." Ava nodded solemnly, then glanced toward the tree. "Mama, he left a gift card. Can we get real juice now? The kind with pulp?" Maya laughed. "Yes, baby. I think we can finally buy real juice." They shared oatmeal at the small kitchen table, sweetened with a little sugar Hazel had given them earlier that week. Maya had placed the Green Mart card carefully inside her wallet the night before, along with the note, "Santa never forgets those who give." She hadn't shown it to Ava yet. That felt like something she'd explain when her daughter was old enough to understand what it truly meant. Later that morning, Maya layered them up in coats, mittens, and boots. The snow outside was ankle-deep now, but soft, clean, beautiful. There was a stillness in the air that made the entire street feel reverent, like Christmas had tiptoed in during the night and left a blessing on every rooftop. They walked together down to the corner store, where Maya picked up a few essentials: bread, eggs, a small bag of coffee, and yes, orange juice with pulp. Ava carried the juice carton like it was a crown jewel. As they passed a church on their way back, the bells began to chime, slow and deliberate. Ava stopped and looked up at the tall steeple. "Mama," she whispered, "what do bells mean?" Maya glanced up, her breath fogging in the air. "It means it's Christmas. It means someone is calling out joy into the world." Ava tilted her head. "Like when we left the cookies?" "Yes," Maya said, "just like that." When they returned home, Hazel was waiting outside their door, a knit shawl wrapped around her shoulders, and a brown grocery bag in hand. "Merry Christmas," she said, handing Maya the bag. "Roast chicken. Thought you might like something besides soup today." Maya blinked. "Hazel, this is too much." "Nonsense," Hazel replied, brushing the comment away with a gloved hand. "You two lit up this hallway the other night. My door smelled like sugar and cinnamon. It brought back memories." She paused, looking down for a moment. "I haven't felt Christmas like that since my husband passed." Maya's voice softened. "I'm glad we could bring a little of it back." Hazel looked up and smiled gently. "You brought a lot of it back." "Die." Inside, Maya set the chicken on the counter and let the oven preheat. She didn't have stuffing or cranberry sauce, but there were potatoes, and she could roast them with butter and salt. It would be simple, but it would be warm, and it would be enough. While the food cooked, Ava played on the rug, creating imaginary snow forts with her blocks. Maya watched her for a long time, her heart tugging between contentment and a deeper, rising clarity. She needed to do more than survive. She needed to plan. After dinner, while Ava was napping on the couch, cheeks pink from the warmth of their meal, Maya pulled out her notebook again. She turned to a clean page and wrote at the top, "Little Christmas Project." Underneath it, she started to sketch ideas, not big ones, not yet, just small thoughts. Collect gently used coats next winter. Organize a cookie swap for the apartment building. Make a giving tree with handmade ornaments for people to take home. Leave thank you notes for strangers who work Christmas shifts. Bus drivers, janitors, nurses. The ideas came faster than she could write. She smiled as she scribbled, and for the first time in years, she wasn't thinking in terms of, just get through today. She was thinking ahead, dreaming, even. That night, they sat under the soft glow of their plastic tree. The wooden angel swayed slightly in a breeze coming from the cracked window, its golden edges catching the light. Ava rested her head on Maya's lap and yawned. Mama, do you think we can be Santa again next year? Maya brushed a curl from her daughter's forehead and kissed it gently. Yes, baby, every year. Ava smiled. Even if we don't have much. Maya's voice was steady. Especially if we don't have much. Double. They sat in silence for a long moment. The kind of silence that didn't feel empty but full of memory, of hope, of something sacred. In the quiet, Maya's eyes drifted to the angel ornament again. A stranger had once stepped forward and changed her entire trajectory. Not with a speech, not with a grand gesture, but with a simple act of kindness. It had reminded her that she was not invisible, and now she would spend every Christmas reminding someone else of the same. The days after Christmas passed like slow, sleepy breaths. The town settled into its winter rhythm, quiet streets, low skies, and the soft hum of heaters running behind every door that could afford them. But for Maya, the days didn't blur the way they used to. They had shape now, purpose. Each morning began with oatmeal and orange juice, followed by a few hours spent updating resumes, browsing job boards at the public library, and checking the community bulletin boards for any sign of opportunity. It was the kind of grind that could wear a person thin, but Maya carried something with her now that made the burden lighter. That wooden angel still hung on the tree, long after most neighbors had taken theirs down. Ava had insisted they keep it up until spring, and Maya hadn't argued. Because that ornament wasn't just decoration, it was a marker, a reminder that someone, somewhere, had seen her, had believed she was worth helping, and now, she was determined to build something from that belief. On December 30th, Maya stood in the community center gymnasium, her coat zipped to the chin and Ava bundled beside her, staring up at a corkboard wall covered in flyers, lost dogs, babysitting services, car for sale. Beneath them, a large poster with taped edges announced, New Year's Neighborhood Swap Jan 5th. Bring what you can, take what you need, no cost, just kindness. It was Hazel's idea originally. She'd mentioned it over tea 2 nights after Christmas, her hands wrapped around a mug, and her voice steady. People got extra, clothes that don't fit, toys kids outgrew. We gather it all in the gym. Let folks come and get what they need. Maya had nodded slowly. Like a little market, but free? Hazel grinned. Exactly. We'll call it the Give Table. Maya volunteered to help organize. That afternoon, she took Ava door to door with a notepad and pen, collecting names, donations, and offers to help set up. Some people hesitated. Some didn't open their doors at all, but many welcomed them warmly, especially when they saw Ava bundled up with her 2 big mittens and gap-toothed smile. By the end of the day, they had promises of coats, children's books, 2 lamps, a stroller, and several bags of groceries. One woman, pale and jittery, handed Maya a sealed envelope marked, "For someone who really needs it," and asked that it be left anonymously. Maya tucked it into her coat with care, her heart humming with the memory of her own anonymous gift. That night, back at home, she updated the list in her notebook under the project name she had circled twice in red ink, Little Christmas. It wasn't just a cute name anymore. It was becoming real. On New Year's Eve, the building buzzed with rare energy. Hazel hosted a potluck in the hallway, nothing fancy, just crock-pots of chili, trays of baked beans, cornbread, and cups of cider passed around like currency. Ava sat with 2 other kids from the floor, coloring with stubby crayons on grocery bags that they turned into New Year's gift bags. Maya caught snippets of conversation, neighbors reconnecting, laughing, remembering someone's birthday or sharing who got engaged. Maya didn't say much. She just watched. Watched as the building turned from a stack of walls into something else entirely. A community. At midnight, someone pulled out an old speaker and played Auld Lang Syne. Maya didn't know all the lyrics, but she hummed along, her arm wrapped around Ava, who had already fallen asleep against her chest. When the song ended, Hazel raised a cup of cider and tapped it lightly with a spoon. "I know this year hasn't been easy," she said, her voice cracking slightly, "but it brought me here. To this hallway. To you good people." She looked at Maya. "To you, Maya, who reminded me that the smallest acts still matter." Maya shook her head. "I just baked some cookies." "Oh," Hazel smiled. "And you baked them when you had barely enough to share. That's what makes it beautiful." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Maya felt a blush rise to her cheeks, but she didn't look away. For once, she let herself be seen. She looked down at Ava, sleeping soundly in her arms, and whispered, "Happy New Year, baby." On January 2nd, 3 days before the swap, Maya received a phone call. Not from a friend, not from Hazel, not from a debt collector, from a number she didn't recognize. "Hi, is this Maya Williams?" "Yes, this is Sarah Layton, coordinator at Maple Hill Preschool. We received your application a few weeks ago for a classroom aide position. Are you still available?" Maya sat down slowly at the edge of her bed. Yes, I am. Would you be able to come in for an interview this Friday morning?" I'd love to." The woman gave her the time and address, then added, "We were really touched by your cover letter, by the way. Especially the part about wanting to teach children more than just ABCs. Maya blinked. She'd written that part late at night, unsure if it was too honest. "Thank you," she said. When she hung up, she looked down at her hands. They were shaking. Friday. That gave her 3 days. 3 days to prepare. To find a clean shirt. To rehearse answers. To believe she belonged in a classroom again. But before that, there was still the swap. Still one more chance to be Santa. Still one more chance to pass it on. The sun hadn't yet risen on January 5th when Maya rolled out of bed and quietly moved through the apartment. Outside, the sidewalks were crusted with ice, and the cold had that sharp, metallic bite that made every breath feel like it cut straight to the lungs. Still, inside the community center gymnasium, a kind of warmth was already beginning to bloom. The place smelled faintly of floor wax and coffee. Folding tables were arranged in 2 long rows down the center of the room, and Maya, Hazel, and a few neighbors were unpacking bags, labeling boxes, and setting out the first wave of donated items. Children's coats hung neatly from a makeshift rack crafted out of broomsticks and string. A basket held winter mittens in every color, some hand-knit, some worn but clean. There were puzzles with missing pieces, picture books with taped spines, canned goods, a slow cooker, and even a few unopened boxes of diapers. The neighborhood swap was coming to life. Maya moved with purpose, her hands steady as she organized a row of children's shoes by size. She wore the same navy cardigan she'd had for years, sleeves pushed up, hair pulled into a clean bun. She hadn't slept much the night before, not from anxiety, but from anticipation. This wasn't just a swap. This was the first time she was at the center of something hopeful. Not as a receiver, but as a builder. Hazel appeared beside her, arms full of blankets. "You're here early." "I couldn't sleep," Maya said with a smile. "Kept thinking about whether anyone would show up." "They will," Hazel said simply, then added with a wink. "People always come when there's free stuff." "Nah." They laughed together, and the sound echoed off the gymnasium walls. By 9 a.m., the first families trickled in, some carrying donations of their own, others empty-handed but wearing that hesitant look Maya recognized so well. The shame of needing help and the fear of being seen asking for it. She greeted them at the door with a smile that said, "You belong here." "No questions, no sign-ins," she explained kindly. "Take whatever your family needs. If you brought something to share, just leave it on any table." A woman with a toddler on her hip looked at her in disbelief. "Really? No ID? No forms?" Maya shook her head. "Nope. Just kindness." Within an hour, the gym buzzed with quiet energy. Children darted between tables, trying on 2 big boots and reading books on the floor. Teenagers helped their parents load blankets and food into plastic bags. Elderly residents took home new slippers and jars of peanut butter with grateful nods. And at the center of it all, Maya moved from table to table, restocking, folding, welcoming. Around noon, she took a break, sitting on the bleachers with a paper cup of coffee someone had placed into her hand. Her legs ached, and her back twinged from the constant bending and lifting, but it was the best kind of tired she'd ever known. Ava climbed up beside her, holding a pair of red mittens. "Mama, can I give these to the little girl over there, the one with the pink shoes?" Maya smiled. "Of course, baby." Ava jumped down and ran off, her curls bouncing with each step. Maya watched her daughter press the mittens into the little girl's hands. The child beamed. The mother mouthed, "Thank you." Hazel sat down beside Maya with a deep sigh. "Your little one's got your heart." "She's got more than that," Maya replied. "She's got her own." Hazel nudged her gently. You doing okay? Maya nodded. Better than okay. They sat in silence for a moment, watching their neighbors move through the space like threads weaving something whole. Then Hazel spoke again, her voice low. You know, I've lived in this building for 22 years. I've seen people come and go. But this is new. Feels like a neighborhood again. Maya swallowed the lump forming in her throat. I just wanted people to feel what we felt on Christmas Eve. Hazel looked at her. You didn't just pass on kindness, Maya. You started something. As the afternoon wore on, the tables grew lighter, and the bags by the door grew heavier. One woman left with shoes for her teenage son, and came back an hour later, with 2 blankets and a crock pot she no longer used. A man came in for canned goods and returned with a basket of oranges from his backyard tree. The give and take flowed naturally, without anyone keeping score. By 4 p.m., Maya had just begun packing up the remaining items when she heard someone calling her name. She turned. A tall man stood near the door, his coat dusted with snow. For a moment, she didn't recognize him. Then her breath caught. The gray wool coat, the navy scarf. It was him, the man from Green Mart. He stepped forward slowly, almost sheepishly, like someone entering a space he wasn't sure he belonged in. Maya met him halfway. I wasn't sure you'd ever find your way back, she said quietly. He smiled. I wasn't sure I was supposed to. They stood there for a beat, the energy of the room spinning around them, kids laughing, bags rustling, people sharing stories. And between them, something unspoken passed. Recognition, respect, gratitude. Maya broke the silence. You started this, you know. He shook his head. No, I just nudged the first domino. You built everything after. She looked down, smiling. I never got your name. Daniel, he said, extending his hand. Daniel Holt. She took it. His grip was firm, steady. Thank you, Daniel. He glanced around the room. Looks like Santa came after all. Maya nodded. He did, but he looked a little different this year. Daniel chuckled. Don't they always? Friday morning came with silver skies and the kind of cold that soaked into your bones. Maya stood outside Maple Hill Preschool, her fingers tucked deep into the pockets of her coat, a folder clutched tightly beneath her arm. She stared at the modest red brick building with its faded blue trim and cheerful welcome banner above the entrance, trying to still the nervous rhythm of her breathing. Inside that building was the kind of chance she hadn't let herself hope for in years. A steady job, a classroom, a future. She adjusted the scarf around her neck, straightened her spine, and stepped inside. The warmth hit her immediately, radiators humming, walls painted with murals of handprint turkeys and watercolor suns. The air smelled faintly of crayons, coffee, and something sweet from the break room. Laughter echoed from down the hallway, high-pitched and bubbling. She walked up to the front desk and smiled at the receptionist, a woman in her 60s with horn-rimmed glasses and a grandmotherly smile. Hi, I'm Maya Williams. I have an interview at 9? Of course, dear, the woman said warmly, checking her clipboard. You're with Miss Layton, down the hall, last door on the left. Maya murmured a thank you and walked toward the classroom. The walls were covered in construction paper snowmen and stars made of aluminum foil. One door had a sign that read, "Kindness is our classroom rule." Another was decorated with paper mittens, each one labeled with a child's name. She stopped outside the last door, took a breath, and knocked. A voice from inside called out, "Come in." Maya opened the door and stepped into a room filled with soft carpet, low tables, colorful bins, and the faint sound of lullaby music playing on a speaker in the corner. A woman in her 40s, with shoulder-length brown hair and a warm, steady gaze, stood up from her desk. Maya Williams? Yes, ma'am. I'm Sarah Layton. I'm so glad you came. Bye now. They shook hands, and Maya sat in the small chair across from her. Miss Layton offered her coffee, which Maya politely declined, afraid her hands might shake too visibly. They began the interview. Questions about experience, classroom routines, behavior management, why Maya wanted to work with children. Maya answered as clearly as she could. She told them about the reading circle she used to lead at the library, about how she'd helped Ava's kindergarten teacher with art projects when she could. She described how much she valued patience, routine, and compassion, how she believed that children learned best when they felt seen. Miss Layton listened carefully, nodding, taking notes. Then she asked a question Maya hadn't expected. In your cover letter, you wrote that you want to teach kids more than just the alphabet, that you want them to learn how to treat people with gentleness. Where does that come from? Maya paused. She hadn't prepared for this one, so she told the truth. I think it comes from being invisible for a long time. From knowing how much it matters when someone notices you. Really notices you. Especially when you're struggling. I want children to know what kindness feels like before the world teaches them to doubt it. Miss Layton was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. I don't usually do this, she said, reaching for a folder. But I think you'd be a perfect fit. We'd love to bring you on. Part-time classroom aide to start. Monday through Thursday mornings. We can help with training, background check, of course, and orientation next week. Maya blinked. Are you serious? Miss Layton laughed. I'm a preschool teacher. I know sincerity when I see it. Maya's breath caught. She felt lightheaded, but in the best way. She nodded, trying not to cry. I'd be honored. They stood, shook hands again, and Miss Layton walked her to the door. As Maya stepped outside, the wind hit her face, sharp and icy, but she barely felt it. She walked home slowly, watching her breath curl in the air like smoke. For the first time in months, she wasn't walking into uncertainty. She was walking into something solid. When she reached the apartment, Ava was at the window, waiting, her face pressed against the glass. The moment Maya opened the door, the little girl rushed forward. Mama, how did it go? Did you get it? Maya scooped her up, laughing. I got it, baby. I got the job. Ava squealed with delight, her arms wrapping tightly around her mother's neck. Can we celebrate? Maya nodded. You bet we can. That night, they made pancakes for dinner. With the last of the eggs and a splash of orange juice in the batter, they cooked them on the stove until the kitchen smelled like syrup and Sunday mornings. Maya lit a small candle and set it in the center of the table, just for fun. Ava called it the celebration candle. After dinner, Ava pulled out her drawing pad and sat cross-legged on the floor, tongue poking from the corner of her mouth as she concentrated. When she finished, she held it up proudly. It was a picture of their Christmas tree, with a tiny angel at the top and a woman and little girl standing beneath it, holding hands. Above them, in bold crayon letters, she had written, "We are Santa." Maya's chest ached with joy. She reached for her notebook again that night and flipped to a new page. January 5th, the day I stopped waiting for the world to save me. The day I realized I'd been saving us all along. Not alone, but with love, with community, with Ava. She closed the book. Tomorrow would be Saturday. The swap was over. The job was set. The year had begun. But something else was stirring now. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something far more powerful than she had dared to imagine. Saturday morning arrived with rare sunlight slicing through the frost-covered window panes. The apartment glowed with a warm, sleepy haze, the kind of light that made everything look softer, less worn, more whole. Maya stood by the stove, flipping pancakes while Ava chattered on the floor, arranging her crayons into a rainbow. The little girl had taken to drawing everything now. The tree in the square, the mittens they gave away, the angel on top of their tiny plastic tree. Her world, once shaded in uncertainty, now bloomed in color. Hazel knocked gently at the door around 9. She was dressed for church, long gray coat, smart burgundy hat with a velvet ribbon, and black gloves that matched her boots. She stepped in, brushed the chill off her shoulders, and handed Maya a brown envelope. "What's this?" Maya asked, wiping her hands on a towel. Hazel smiled faintly. "It's for you." Maya opened it cautiously. Inside was a letterhead from the local neighborhood board. Her eyes scanned the words quickly. "We are pleased to inform you that you've been nominated for the Community Kindness Spotlight Award for January." She blinked. "Hazel, what is this?" Hazel shrugged, trying not to smile too wide. "Some folks noticed what you did with the swap, the cookie bags, the quiet kindness, and someone might have been me, might have been others, thought you deserved a little more than a thank you." Maya sat down at the kitchen table, overwhelmed. "I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Hazel said gently. "You already said it all with actions." Ava looked up from her coloring. "Mama got an award?" Maya nodded slowly, blinking back tears. "Yes, baby. Looks like Santa noticed after all." That evening, Maya and Ava dressed in their warmest clothes and walked the few blocks to the community library, where the small awards ceremony was being held. The reading room had been converted for the event, folding chairs arranged in tidy rows, a long table with a pitcher of cider, and a small podium beside a backdrop of twinkling string lights. The crowd was modest 20, maybe 25 people, but the air buzzed with warmth and pride. Daniel was there. Maya spotted him leaning against the back wall, a quiet presence in his gray coat, the same one he'd worn the day he paid for her groceries. He met her gaze and gave a nod, subtle but unmistakable. She nodded back. The board chair, a kind-eyed woman named Connie, stepped up to the microphone and introduced Maya as a quiet leader, a spark in the cold, someone who reminded us that compassion can be contagious. Maya was invited up to speak. Her knees wobbled slightly as she climbed the steps to the podium. She cleared her throat and glanced out at the room. Hazel sat in the front row, beaming. Ava waved from her seat, one mitten still clutched in her lap like a good luck charm. "I never expected to be standing here," Maya began. "I wasn't trying to lead anything. I was just trying to make it through the holidays without letting my little girl see how afraid I was." She paused, then continued, her voice steady. "Someone helped me when I didn't expect it. Someone who didn't know me, who didn't ask for anything. That act of kindness, it shifted something in me. And I realized, maybe we're not supposed to wait for change. Maybe we're supposed to be the change. Even if it's small, even if it's quiet." There was a silence that followed, not empty, but full of unspoken emotion. Then came the applause, gentle, respectful, and deeply sincere. Afterward, Maya stepped down and made her way to Ava, who leapt into her arms with a grin. "You were amazing, Mama." Maya laughed, hugging her close. "You think so?" Everyone was listening, even the man with the coffee stain on his sweater. They turned to leave, and that's when Daniel approached. "You're not very good at staying invisible," he said, smiling. Maya laughed, eyes bright. "Turns out, I never really wanted to be." Daniel nodded toward Ava. "She's the lucky one." Maya looked down at her daughter. "I think I'm the lucky one." He reached into his coat pocket and handed her a small white box. "What's this?" "Something I found in a shop last week. Thought of you." She opened the box. Inside was a second wooden angel. Slightly different from the first, this one had wings outstretched. Mid-flight. "I thought it could keep the other one company," Daniel said. Maya held it in her hand, feeling the smooth grain of the carved wood. "Thank you," she said, voice soft. He glanced around, then added, "And Maya, if you ever need someone to help carry